You enter a realm of spirit, of sight and sound and mind. Your radio is a cosmic doorway and your psyche begins to spark. When you tune in to Gary Anderson and Night Dreams After Dark.
Do you have a paranormal story you want to share on Night Dreams Talk Radio? You could be a guest. Email us at nightdreamstalkradio@gmail.com.
You're listening to Night Dreams Talk Radio After Dark with our host, Gary Anderson.
And that is me. Well, James, did you survive the break?
Yes, I did. I'm still here. No time slips. I'm good.
Okay, let's get Rob on here. I got the line ringing for him. Let's see what happens here.
Hello, Rob speaking.
Well, Rob speaking. This is Gary at Night Dreams speaking. How you doing, my friend?
I'm okay. How are you doing?
I am doing good. How about yourself? And how was that trip?
The trip was fantastic. Still suffering a little jet lag from it, but I'm pretty much over it now.
I bet. I mean, how long were you there for?
I was there for 3 weeks.
Oh, wow. Now,
when you take vacation, you might as well spend some time at it. Why fly over for, it's an 8-hour trip each way, so by plane, so why not just enjoy it there for a while before you have to come back and face reality,
That's the bad part, is facing reality sometimes. I got to ask you a question. What is the weather like in the UK?
It was pretty cold when I was there. It was like in the mid to higher 50s, and you'd get a day of sunshine. It wouldn't be bad with no wind, and then you'd get rain and a lot of wind. And literally, I was walking up one road towards my an inn up in a little village on the moors, and I had 2 rolling suitcases, and they blew ahead of me and actually were dragging me up the hill. It was that windy.
Oh, wow. That would be scary right there. I mean,
Well, it wasn't scary. It was actually kind of fun. I got tired of dragging those stupid suitcases.
So they just made it easier for you to bring them. Oh, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. The forecast, for the UK for this winter, they're saying it's going to be like the coldest in the last 30 or 40 years it's supposed to be.
Yeah, I saw saw that. I saw that on the Daily Express there, but their Daily Express is an alarmist one. While I was there, they were supposed to have had a hurricane hit and all this stuff and deluges, and none of it happened. Yeah, there was some rain and some squalls, but it wasn't anything like the Daily Express said. But yeah, I did read where it's supposed to be the coldest winter in like 30 years, and the beast from the east would be hitting again.
Yeah, it's kind of scary because, you got the water, being heated from the equator. It goes all the way up to, off of the UK, which kind of keeps it from going into an ice age. And what's happening, I've been keeping track of that water, that thermal water coming up is almost stalled. And you can blame that.
Right, that's the Gulf Stream, and it is because, Edinburgh is at the same latitude approximately as Anchorage, Alaska. And the only thing that keeps it warmer and these microclimates is that Gulf Stream, and they're saying it's shutting down. Plus, we're entering the grand solar minimum. The last time we had that was the Big Chill, the Little Ice Age in the 16 and 1700s.
And that is scary because what happens if part of Europe or all of Europe kind of goes into a mini ice age? I mean, where are the people going to go?
Well, I imagine the vacation spot won't be quite what it once was. I don't know, because England was completely covered in a glacier at one time. But, I mean, do you remember the famous, you're old enough to remember Hans Brinker and the Silver Skates, the Walt Disney movie and all that, right?
Oh, yes.
Well, they were skating on the canals in Amsterdam, and they haven't been able to do that since. They've frozen over, but never nearly enough to allow people to have ice skating competitions on it. Same with London on the Thames River. It used to freeze 20 feet thick, and they would have their winter fair, F-A-Y-R-E, winter festival on the ice on the Thames River. They haven't had that since the turn of the last century, 1900.
That's scary, too, because, like 1900, Russia, people, actually starved and froze to death because it got so cold they couldn't even keep their houses warm, and a lot of them just like froze to death in their houses.
It's no accident the chimney was invented during that period, too. During, I believe, the 15th, 16th century is when the chimney became fashionable.
It's scary. I'm just wondering if that, thermal flow would stop. What could happen? I mean, we have Antarctica, and people need to start taking more noticeable, more notice into it because it is really melting like you wouldn't believe. And this time of year, it shouldn't be melting.
Yeah, so is Greenland. I mean, there's no doubt. There's no doubt that we're in the middle of big changes. I mean, this grand solar minimum is supposed to last like 30-something years. There's no sunspot activity at all. And again, the last time they had that was when we had the Big Chill. And,
yeah.
do you remember the picture of Washington crossing the Delaware, all that snow and ice and all that? That was during the Big Chill.
And, too, like even on the last major ice age where I live nearby, Seattle was covered, they said, over 1,000 some feet of ice. But they said if you went like 60 miles away from Seattle, it was livable. So there'll be areas, that aren't going to be quite effective as bad. But I tell you, where are the people going to go if all of a sudden, the UK and France and all that stuff, or Germany and all that start going into a deep freeze and don't come out of it? It kind of reminds me of
You're talking a major glacial age. They're not predicting that, but they are predicting like a big chill, what they call the Big Chill. So, I mean, hopefully we're not going into another glacial age. If we are, well, then all bets are off. I'm moving to Mexico. How about you?
Me too. Because do you think, honestly, the governments would announce if we were? Because think of the mass panic, Rob, that people would go through if they knew something bad was coming down, the highway, and they would freak out. Society would start breaking down ahead of time. So I don't think they would bother even telling us till it starts really happening. I think about Whitney's book, along with Art Bell wrote, The Global Superstorm. Kind of, they wrote that book, and they were kind of off in their timing, but you know what? It kind of is starting to play out.
Well, it's definitely a problem. I think it's going to be a slowly progressing one, and people tend to become accustomed to things. Do remember that even during the Big Chill, the human population expanded, explored the New World, established colonies, and the economies became more prosperous. That's not to say that people like in France didn't die of starvation and hunger because of crop failure, which triggered the French Revolution, and that there wasn't major political upheavals. But by and large, the human population didn't shrink during the Big Chill. It grew considerably.
Yeah, but I don't know with the amount of people that are walking on our planet right now. I got a funny feeling it could go the opposite way really fast.
Well, that's the other flip side of the coin, the sheer number of billions of people, the mass migrations. We're not talking about a few thousand over a few years. We're talking about maybe millions over a year or two. So, yeah, absolutely, it could cause tremendous political upheaval. It's. By the way, are we on the air?
Yes, we are. We are on 22 radio stations. We're on the internet talking live. So yes, people. I know. Like I was telling James out there, who's my cohort at times. I think we got 10 people listening tonight, James.
Well, one of them had to go to appointments, so 9.
Oh, we got 9 people listening off of 22 radio. That's not bad.
Not bad at all.
Well, that's better than 0, right?
Yeah. Well, I people ask me all the time, how many people listen? My phone gets blasted from people instant messaging me. My emails, I came in from a day's worth of emails. I can't even go through them anymore unless I spend the whole entire day reading emails and answering them. That's how many people are listening to the show now. It's gotten scary, Rob. It really has.
Oh, that's pretty good, though, actually. When I was on Coast to Coast, I asked just before we went on air, what's the average audience, on a given night? He said, well, at any given time, it averages around 42 to 44 million people. And all of a sudden, I'm on the air and going, hi, Rob, how are you doing? And it's like I almost couldn't speak. There were so many people listening, and I had that moment of sheer absolute panic. I mean, when you think about it, 44 million people, that's a lot of people.
That is a lot, and that's enough to get a guest where they don't want to talk. When I tell my guests, hey, we got 10 people, then they relax. I won't tell them that we're on a radio station in Moscow, Idaho. We're in San Diego and a few other stations across the country. I want people not to be nervous when they come on my show.
Well, yeah, and then telling just before you go on the air, there's 40-something million people listening to you isn't the way to make you feel relaxed, I'll tell you.
Oh, yeah.
So, but, you get over it. You get over that little bit of stage fright, hopefully, and then it's all normal again. Usually it's the host that carries you through it. If the host is a good host, they steer you, down the path carefully. And but if you have one of those hosts that just sort of leave you hanging, it's another matter entirely.
Oh, yeah. Do you think the wall is going to keep out all these people if something bad happens from coming into our country?
No, and first of all, the majority of people who come into this country come in by airplane. They fly over the wall. They, if you're talking about immigration, they come in on tourist visas and just never leave. That's the vast majority of them. I lived 9 miles from the border, 9 miles south of San Diego, 9 miles north of the Tijuana border, and the vast majority of people coming into the country came in legally and then just didn't leave. So,
yeah,
that's not going to stop anything. I mean, I'm kind of against it anyway because it really isn't the tradition of the United States to be there. We're all immigrants. My grandparents came from Lithuania, couldn't speak a word of English, and before that there was Irish, there were German, there was Swedish. None of them could speak English either. They had different customs and different ways, but, we've always prided ourselves on being a melting pot, and for me that still holds true. I still think our strength comes from law. We're not a country made up of race like the French or the Greek or the Italian or the German or the Swedish, which are basically one race, and that's why they have Sweden and Germany and France. We're a country that was formed by law, and all of us are immigrants. Even the Native Americans originally came from somewhere else. So it's just my personal opinion for what it's worth, but yeah, I think it makes us great, not weaker, to have the strength and customs and I do love the ethnicity of our different cultures. You go up to New England and you have the Italian food, which is so wonderful, and the Polish and the German, and you go to the Southwest and you have this marvelous Mexican food, and then you go up to Canada and you have this really boring boiled stuff.
Oh, yeah.
I'm kidding.
How much
I like Canada.
How much tea? How much tea did you drink when you were in the UK?
I'm sorry?
How much tea did you drink when you were in the UK?
More than I probably should have, and I had my share of beer, too. The English beers are so good. I'm not normally a beer drinker. But you go to their pubs, and there's a roaring fire and wing-back armchairs sitting next to it, and everyone's is very convivial and friendly, and